Hi, community friends. Welcome to today's Led by Community event. Today is part of our Talks and Prose event series, and I can't wait to get stuck in. So, welcome everybody. Do say hi in the comments, say hello, share where you're from, share what you're excited to learn about or hear about today from our amazing speaker, Beth, who we'll be bringing on in a moment. Yeah, great to see you all. So take a moment to get settled, get comfortable. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. Get yourself a drink, make sure you're in a nice, comfy position in your chair, and settle in for a talk with Beth. Great, I can see some people in the chat now saying hi. Hello, hello. Okay, well, I'm going to say thank you to our sponsor, Gainsight, who support the Talks and Prose event series. So thank you, Gainsight, for supporting today's event. And we also have some more events coming up in February. We have Thriving Membership Communities with Tom Ross, which will be awesome. Tom is always amazing. So make sure you sign up for that one. That's on February the 18th. I believe we'll be popping a little link in the chat. Oh, I can see lots of people coming in now. Hi, Daniela. Welcome, Kate. Welcome, Chris. Hey, Rosie. Hey, Brittany from Vancouver. Awesome. Hi, Nicole. Hi, Franca. Welcome, welcome. Great. So I can see that we've popped a link in there for our upcoming events. And the other one I wanted to flag was on the 11th of March, which is Scaling Community Relationships at Squarespace. And that's with Sarah Griesdorf. So go and click the link and sign up for our other events. Perfect. I can see everybody sharing their LinkedIn profiles, which is wonderful. Okay, so we'll have a Q&A as we go. So feel free to pop those in as we go along, as Beth goes through her talk, chuck stuff in, and we'll come back to it at the end and we'll answer as many as possible, as many as we have time for. This recording is going to be available in our video library for you to revisit at any time. So don't worry about missing anything. You can come back to it. So let me introduce Beth. Beth is a community and marketing leader with a strong background in digital analytics, marketing automation, and marketing technology. She brings years of experience working across platforms like Salesforce, Pardo, and HubSpot, using data to inform strategy while keeping a deep focus on human behavior and connection. Known for her curiosity and problem-solving mindset, Beth is passionate about peer-led storytelling and the power of community voices. She designs thoughtful, data-informed programs that help members step into the spotlight, share their experiences, and create meaningful value for one another. So here we go. Welcome, Beth.
Awesome. Hello.
Hello.
I can get my slides up.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Let me get my timer started. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm really excited to chat with you about peer-led content and how we've been able to leverage this at Amplitude through our How I Amplitude series. So I know Nicola introduced me, but I wanted to go into a little bit more detail. So really just a bit of background on how I actually ended up as a community manager. So I'm the senior community manager at Amplitude, and I'll get into a little bit about what Amplitude is in the next slide. I've been in the team for almost 2 years now in May. And I was actually an Amplitude customer for 2.5 years, which is kind of how I got into this role. So in my previous role, I was the senior data and analytics manager at a growing startup called Misa, which was a smart thermostat company based in North America. And I was actually an early member of the Slack community that we spun up just shortly before I joined. So I was an early member in that community, going in there, asking questions, sharing my expertise, and really just got very involved within the community. And so they were looking to bring somebody on, and I was a subject matter expert. And so that's how really I was able to get into this position. And while this is my first role as a community manager, I've relied a lot on communities throughout my career. I've typically worked in marketing at smaller stage startups, and I've been really learning things on my own as a team of one a lot of times. So I've relied a lot on communities, and so I've seen the value on the other side. And so it was very cool for me to be able to join an organization and a product that I was really passionate about, and to be able to give back and help enable users on the other side of things. And just to give you a little bit of background on what Amplitude is, and just to kind of level set on what we provide here in the community. So we're an AI analytics platform. And so there's sort of three elements to that. We, at that sense level, we really help customers collect data, have guardrails to keep your data clean, accurate, and organized. Then we have this decide layer where we offer product analytics and marketing analytics on the quantitative side. And on the qualitative side, there's things like session replay and AI feedback capabilities to bring in all of your customer data feedback from different spaces. And then we also have this act layer where we can actually activate that data and do something about the findings that you're seeing. And it's all really about how users behave within your platform, whether that's web-based or app-based, and really just to give you a better sense of how users are moving through your platform. So now we'll get into just a bit of an agenda. So what the session will look like today is a little bit of an introduction on the community itself, and an overview, why peer-led storytelling works, and what it looks like and how to get started. And then we'll wrap things up with a Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, definitely keep those for the end, and we'll dive into those things. So at a high level, the way that I like to think about our community is within these three pillars. So those are connect. And so really, the core of community is really allowing people to connect and build relationships with one another, kind of working on similar problems. Our community is really practitioner-led. So it's really the people working day to day within Amplitude. We have the learning pillar, and that's really to learn and understand how other organizations are using Amplitude, and then also just analytics in general, and kind of anything around data culture and using data within your organizations. And then also the grow pillar. So through programs like How I Amplitude, our in-person meetups and other sessions that we host, it allows you to grow personally and professionally, and really to step up and share your expertise with the community. And so what is the How I Amplitude series for us at Amplitude? So it's a monthly peer-led webinar series where practitioners share how they actually use Amplitude in their day-to-day work. So we feature people across different roles, different industries, product types, stages of maturity, and really we're just trying to show like what the art of the possible is with our platform. So there's lots of different ways to approach your analytics. It's really customizable. And with that comes a bit of complexity in how you can set things up. And so being able to hear from other people and how they're using things, it's really helpful as you're getting set up, if it's, your first time using a platform like this. And so the way that we really approach this session is it's not about, having perfect outcomes and all of these like big shiny numbers. And while those things are really nice to see, we really like to show people at different stages of their journey with Amplitude. So, people who join the community want to hear from people at different stages and really relate to the stories. So if we're just showing, these like really extensive like success stories, people don't always relate to that. And while people want to know like what they can strive towards, they also want to feel that they can relate to folks as they're learning here. So it's really about like the decisions, trade-offs, and like all of the context within that experience. And we find typically that, traditional case studies will often focus on the outputs and the numbers and things like that. Whereas this, we're really trying to get at the how and the actual like tactical things that people are doing to get the outcomes they want. It's really about like how they're leveraging the platform and less about just like, hey, we achieved, X number of adoption or things like that. And so it's really about these like real stories from practitioners, all the use cases around that, and then really that element of like wins and challenges. So when I first joined the community, we actually used to offer a 30-minute call to anyone that joined our Slack community. And this was a really great way to meet our members, to really, have a sense of what they were looking to get out of the community. And we ended up doing hundreds of calls with our user base. And so this gave us a lot of insight into what they were looking for. And a couple of trends emerged through those conversations. While people were at, different levels of expertise, they've maybe used Amplitude at several companies before, maybe they're brand new to it, they're not an analyst. But the biggest things that we were hearing from our customers is that they don't know what they don't know, and they want to learn something from somebody else and what they're doing. So we really took a step back from that, and we really wanted to have this as like the pivotal kind of point for the How I Amplitude. And so we realized that there was a lot of confidence gaps in their approach to analytics. And so we figured that this was something that we could really offer people to kind of help break through those barriers and to learn from others. Okay, and so what does peer-led storytelling unlock? So it doesn't just change who speaks, it changes who owns the space, how people learn, how they see themselves within the community. And so by giving users a voice, instead of it's just being like the brand as the primary narrator and kind of telling those stories, the members bring their lived experiences. And this is really helpful for people who, they want to understand what people are going through. And, the brands don't necessarily always have that context. I have the privilege of having used it. And so, I've been able to really communicate like on the same level as our customers because I understand what they've been going through. And so that's been really helpful. But through these programs, it also empowers ownership over the community. And so when they teach or share their expertise, they stop being an audience and they're part of that building experience of the community. And so they actually feel, ownership over the community and the direction that it's going in. This contextual learning, so the peers, they don't just share what worked. Like, again, it really comes back to those challenges, the struggle they've had, the mistakes. And, a lot of people will join the community because they want to fast track their learning. They don't want to make those same mistakes that people do. So they want to kind of hear like what issues did people encounter, how to avoid those things. And so that context is really helpful. And then, at the core of community, it's really about belonging and identity. And when these members can see themselves and other people leading these conversations, it really shifts that identity in the space. It stops feeling just like this broadcast to the community and starts feeling like a shared home, like they actually are participating in this broader group. Okay, and then taking a step back, like why does peer-led storytelling work? So, I talked a little bit about this with like the case studies, but kind of the problem with brand-led content, there's a time and place for these things, but this content tends to be like really overproduced, really polished, and it's not necessarily the kind of content that, our users want to see in the community. These typically focus on, outcomes and the what and kind of the end results. And what this program tries to do is really focus on that how and the tactical things that went into the outcomes that they're talking about. And so the other piece here, so stories over documentation. Of course, as a technical product, we've got technical documentation. That's obviously a large part of using a platform is understanding just how it actually works. But what those things often miss is like the use cases behind it. And so as humans, storytelling is very important for us to understand and conceptualize things. We learn so much better through this narrative and actual like emotional connection with people. It's a lot more relatable. And it just sticks better in your brain when you're hearing those things from other people. And especially for complex and technical topics. So, a platform like Amplitude, we've made strides on making it easier to use, and it has improved in that way. But, I think it really comes down to your role. If you're an analyst and you work with data all the time, super easy to go in, make a chart, get your insights really easy. And these are becoming, even easier as we develop more AI capabilities within the platform. But, if you're a marketer and you're expected to go in and use Amplitude, it's like a very self-serve product. But if you've never used event-based analytics before, or had to think about some of these things, it can be really overwhelming to jump into. So, this is where stories and use cases can really help people understand how to actually apply those learnings. And so I like to think of this as a flywheel. So kind of starting at the top, you have your stories. By sharing these stories and communicating one-on-one with your members, you're building that trust and safety within that community. And then once that safety and trust is built, you're going to see more engagement because people feel more comfortable and confident to participate in there. And then that's going to fuel more stories. And so, you'll often see people sharing despite not having all of the answers. And this really comes down to that like trust and safety. I think the hard part with building communities is kind of like in those early days, people don't necessarily know like what the expectations are or if it's safe to ask questions. And I find too, like in a technical product community, people don't want to look dumb or they're asking really simple questions. But it's important because everybody starts somewhere and they need to be able to learn from those experiences. So by seeing other people sharing these stories, it empowers other members and really fuels itself. And so I definitely see this as like a flywheel, that the more that you can incentivize and encourage people to share their stories, that's going to encourage other people to share theirs as well. Okay, and so what are some signals to know that the stories are actually landing? And so these are more kind of like qualitative signals. It's not necessarily about like vanity metrics, but you're going to see things like better questions. So they're really going to be formed around use cases and less about like, hey, how do I use X feature? It's more like, I want to have this insight. How do I get that? And so you'll just sort of see different framing around those questions. They're likely also going to be referencing these stories that you're sharing in the community. So this collective knowledge of like different use cases and experiences, those are going to continue to build on past stories. And so, instead of somebody just being like, hey, I'm trying to do X, Y, Z, maybe it's like, hey, I heard Beth share this use case in How I Amplitude, and I'm trying to do this at my organization, but I've encountered XYZ challenge. How do I approach this? And so you'll see like people building on these other stories. And really they're just like referencing each other's approaches, and you're seeing that collective knowledge start building in the community. You're also going to see member validation. So, I find with a lot of these sessions in the chat, like there will be people who are like, yes, like we're experiencing this struggle too. How are you dealing with this? Like, it's just really like validating what they've seen and meeting each other at the same level. Like, hey, there's somebody who's struggled with this too. I can really relate to this and learn from them. And then increased confidence. So it's really more members volunteering ideas, opinions, experiments, like really coming back to that like trust and safety aspect. And then also like with that trust and safety, people are starting to share more ideas as well. If they don't even necessarily have the answer, they're like, hey, I'm trying these things. Maybe you can give this a try as well. And I know these questions will probably be for Q&A, but yeah, the stories. So our series is really typically about the product itself. Sometimes it's a bit more abstract. So it could be things like, building a data culture in your organization. So it could also be like not necessarily like super tactical about Amplitude, but typically the use cases are around like data itself, experimentation, data culture, those kinds of things. Okay, and so I'm going to go into a little bit of detail on like what this program actually looks like for us, how we actually operationalize it, and then give you a bit of a framework that you can work from as well if you're looking to do something similar in your organization. So how do you actually identify storytellers? So this can come back a little bit to where you are in your community journey. So these first suggestions are really like if you already have an established community and how you might be able to leverage your existing members. So we do this in a couple different ways. So we use Tightknit on our Slack community, which can help us see a leaderboard, and then also folks who are becoming more active as time goes on. So those are really great people to keep an eye on. We also use Common Room to bring together all of our different community spaces. We have a web forum, the Slack community, and then all of our events. So this allows us to kind of see across all of the different spaces that we have, who's the most active and what that looks like. And this can be really helpful as well when we're, looking for speakers for in-person meetups. So that's, I'm not talking about that today, but, that's a very similar approach that we take with our meetups as well, with sharing these kinds of use cases. So we can drill down on specific locations. And then if you have a community platform, you can likely see a leaderboard and activity within those spaces. So, your top contributors are kind of easy folks to go after and talk to see if they might be interested in something like this. I'd say the biggest one here, and the reason why I have this bolded is I think one of the biggest indicators for our community, where it's a technical product, is really based on the quality of the questions and responses that we're seeing. So I can just tell based on how in-depth of a response somebody has, the kinds of questions they ask, the features they're referencing, that they know their stuff. They might be leveraging things in unique ways. So I've been able to identify really great presenters by finding those things. And then, I mentioned jumping on calls with members, actually building relationships with them. Through those conversations, you're really going to understand their background and stuff. And the thing that I found really interesting from the member calls that you're not necessarily going to see from just like a reporting system is your champions who may have used you across multiple organizations. So, I've gotten on calls with people like Amplitude's only been around since 2012. And, I've heard people who are like, yeah, I used you since the early days. Like I've been using you for a decade. I've used you at 3 or 5 companies now and implemented it from the ground up. So, you get those stories by actually talking to your members. You're not necessarily, again, going to see that in some dashboard. So I found some really interesting folks that way, which has been really cool. And then both if you're, even if you're kind of have a grown community, but also if you're starting out, a place that you can go is really outside of your community and looking at the different data points that you have. So, connecting with your customer success managers, the account owners, seeing who's posting on social media, just other ways to show that they might be engaged, even using a platform like Amplitude to see who your top users are, how frequently they're using it, because they might not be somebody who's vocal, but they might have stuff that's really interesting to share. So we've even done that approach as well to actually say who in Amplitude are a top user that might have interesting use cases. All right, so the big thing that's a challenge with this is the barriers that you're going to come up against when you're trying to get people to be involved in this. So, barrier 1 and 2 are kind of similar. And, I've experienced this as well, being a customer, being on the other side. You don't necessarily know how much knowledge you have. you might be a beginner, but you might be learning the platform really quickly, and you don't always have a point of reference to know if you really do know a thing or two about the product. So as I mentioned before, like the communities are really trying to get different perspectives at different levels of maturity. And so how you can kind of combat this is to chat with your members, work with them on co-developing the story, validating and kind of encouraging them that what they're going through or what they've learned is actually worth sharing with the community. If you validate where they're struggling, and then like what would be helpful based on conversations with the community, this can really help encourage people to kind of see their experience in a different way. And I think the other thing too is like normalizing the learning in progress. Really just ensuring that both the stories that you're sharing and the way that you're proposing these ideas to your community, that you make it okay that they don't have all the answers, that you can still learn from not being done or having like the best response or outcome here. It's really about just like the steps that it took along the way and making that okay for folks. And it's not having the right answers. It's just about, the encouragement and the safety and trust is ultimately what it comes down to. And then the lack of time. So building frameworks and resources and examples that your users can use are extremely helpful. So I'll talk about this in the next slide and what this looks like for us. But this has been super helpful to give people a point of reference, because if someone's never done anything like this, they've never watched a session, it's really scary for them because they don't know what's involved, what good looks like. And if you can paint that picture for them, it makes it a lot easier to do those things. So I'll get into that in the next one. Okay, and so what this looks like for us. So member outreach, this could be 1 or 2 steps. It kind of depends on the process. So this could look like, a broad call out in the community where you're saying like, hey, we have spots available over the coming weeks. Would love for you guys to opt in if you have any ideas. This one I find can be less effective because it goes back to some of those barriers where people judge themselves. They don't feel like they have a good enough story. So I found it to be most effective by having direct outreach to different individuals. So this can take more work sometimes because, you actually have to have a conversation, but I find the stories end up developing a lot more naturally, and people, they also feel, what's the word? I guess maybe special a little bit, that you've like noticed them and that you've invited them along into this type of thing. So that's been really cool. And then also having an inbound application form on your website. So if people do find these, they're looking at the recaps, they're interested, then they're like, hey, I've got something cool, I'm going to share. So this could be multiple steps. But once somebody has said like, hey, sure, I would love to do this, or like, I'd love to talk more about what this could look like. So really it's a kickoff meeting. You align on the purpose and the outcomes that you're looking to achieve with the session. You help them identify that hook and story, because sometimes they've got a good use case, but they're really just kind of struggling to figure out like what's that key thing to kind of center the story around. And this really helps to come back to like that imposter syndrome and things like that. Is like you can really validate that, hey, this is something that the community would really enjoy. People are struggling with this. I'm hearing from customers that these are challenges. And then once you've decided on that they're going to go ahead with this is where you can share those frameworks and examples. And so what those frameworks and examples can be is maybe you have a template that they can work from. We actually primarily just get people to use their own templates. This also helps with like the unbranded feel. It's very much like, it's up to you. If you need something, we could supply you with a slide deck, but really we allow customers to just use whatever they want to and make it their own. But we give them, a couple samples of past sessions, what the slide decks look like. Here's a recording, here's a recap, here's what we liked about the story. So it at least gives them a point of reference so they know like what's good. And then we usually do an asynchronous slide review. So this is ensuring that the stories are there's clear takeaways, and then provide any feedback as well. So, and this will be through like DMs usually, just to give them a sense of like how things are going. And then usually we do a dry run within a week of the session. Timing is just really depends on when we can schedule something, and then also how confident we feel in the async review. If somebody's like, wants more feedback, we'll usually do it a week out, just to give them a better sense of if they have to make any feedback changes or anything like that. But really it's just to ensure that the story makes sense, identify any gaps, and then, highlight any potential questions that could come up in that session. And then after the session, there's so much goodness in these sessions that, it's, a big opportunity to use this in other ways. So other ways that you could go about this is like a simulive or on-demand session. So this could be an opt-in on your website that people see. You could just have all of your recordings embedded on your site. That's also great. You don't need to use it as lead gen or anything. You can also do a blog recap or a discussion post within your community that captures all like the key takeaways. You can link back to the slides in the recording and have everything there. But it's nice because then you have different ways of consuming that content. You can also have short clips of the video, and this can be used in lots of different ways. So this could be used in emails, social media posts, YouTube videos, tips and tricks, all kinds of things. Video's huge right now, and we're seeing even more of that, especially like user-generated content. So this is huge. Newsletter feature, post-session AMAs. So these could be like synchronous or asynchronous. If you've seen like a really good topic that was just like tons of questions, maybe you didn't have enough time for your Q&A. These are signals that you can, use that content in other ways. Maybe feature that person again and do something different. And then also, these are great for like internal learnings with your team. So, if you have CSMs or salespeople, maybe they've never used Amplitude before. And so this can help give them a sense of the different use cases and how customers are leveraging the platform. So this has been, really helpful for people to understand those things as well. Okay, and then resources to get them started. So we have a one-pager that gives an overview of the series. So really like what's the vision, outline these things and document them. How frequently do you run the sessions? How long are the sessions ran? What's the purpose? Who's the ideal persona that you're presenting to, and what are the outcomes you want? Then I mentioned the frameworks and resources being really important. So any templates that will help them develop their story or some guidelines to help them out. And then also topics of interest. So if you know within the community that there's certain things that come up that people are always interested in, these can help guide the stories that you want to tell within the community, either that you're choosing people based on the things that have come up, or if somebody is looking for a specific topic they know that they want to present, they can kind of pull from this topic bank. So that can be really helpful as well. And then before I kind of wrap things up, so, even, I'm talking about these frameworks and templates and all of these things. And, maybe even you as a community manager, you're like, oh man, like all of this stuff seems so overwhelming. Like I got to have all these things in place. But at the end of the day, like people just want to hear these stories. And so I think just taking a step back, like who in your community already has a story worth telling, and how can you get people to learn from them? Even if you just go on, a call with your community, super open-ended, you just have kind of like an AMA style, just a group conversation, it's easy to do that as well. And, that's how you can kind of build on these things and get to a place where you have a bit more structure. But even just starting simple with something like that, maybe even just a discussion post within your forum. So it can be really easy. It doesn't have to be complicated. But just starting, I think, is really key. And then before we go to questions, we have kind of the key takeaways that I shared today. So peer stories build trust faster than brands can because they feel real. They're relatable. People can actually learn from these experiences, and they don't feel like they're being sold to. It's actually like this really good story that people can relate to. And your job is to guide, not to perfect. So with these stories, like, I'm not trying to like really craft like the perfect narrative when we're going through like reviews. It's really like the story is theirs. We're just trying to help them ensure that their story shines and that it's coming out within their session, and that the structure matters more than the polished output of that. And then one story can power many moments if you design for reuse. So this comes back to the way that you can repurpose your content. There's so much that can come of these stories, and it's almost a shame just to do them as like a one-off session. I think if you just have that in mind as you're designing this, with all of our sessions, we do recaps, and we're exploring right now ways to chop these up into other bite-sized videos. And I think that's also great when you're trying to give your users a voice as well, because it makes them stand out in a lot more ways than just these one-off sessions. So that can be really helpful. All right. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll turn it over to our Q&A now.
Awesome. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for giving us such a brilliant deep dive on this topic and generously sharing all the details of how you've figured things out and how you do things. We do have a fair few questions, so I will read them out for you. So here we go. So, well, they pop up on screen, so you don't need to read them out anyway, just to, give it a little voice. So Naomi has asked, what is the community platform you use? You mentioned a couple, I think.
Yeah, so we use Slack as well, and then we have a web-based platform, so we use the Higher Logic Vanilla platform. So those are both of our two community spaces, and so our Slack community is kind of more where there's like kind of off the cusp, more general conversations, and then our web platform we use as it's still kind of like questions and answers, but really it's our resource hub where we kind of house all of these great resources where people can find out about our events. So we use both spaces as well.
That makes sense. But yeah, really interesting to hear that you're managing it across two different community platforms. So we could have a whole nother chat on that and how you manage it.
Yeah, I have pros and cons that I can share.
Yeah. Okay, next one is from Ryan. I had members whose companies wouldn't allow them to post. So a compromise was to allow anonymous posting. How do you feel about that route?
Yeah, I don't necessarily see anything negative about that. I mean, I think that could help with safety there. I know I've chatted before with some community managers, and that was something that they had dealt with as well. It was just like I forget, it was like competitor insights or something was their community, and so they were probably potentially going to be sharing insights about their competitors, and so it was this kind of struggle that they had, and I don't see any issues with that. I think this kind of relates to the How I Amplitude series is it's less about that they weren't allowed to post, but it can be a struggle sometimes with, when it comes to data, they're sharing insights and things that, their competitors don't want to see, or they don't want their competitors to see. And so the way that we'll kind of get around that is we might show a screenshot with the actual numbers blurred out. There's no reference to like the actual output, but more like the trends. Or what they'll do is they'll add like a random filter or something on it, so it's not like real data. They might show a dummy data set. So that's how we've kind of got around it with some of those. But I know it's been a struggle. Like we've tried before to not show kind of those in-depth questions, or sorry, the output. But sometimes that takes away from the story because they lose a bit of that context. So it's a bit of a struggle sometimes to understand what to show and what not to show.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And you can get around it by saying we doubled or we 3 times this,
Yeah.
aren't you? And then that still brings out a really nice story. But I suppose it depends on whether you're using screenshots and things like that to go along with your case studies that you're sharing. And can we go in and dig around on your website, on the Amplitude website, and find some of these stories?
Yeah, I'll share here. So there's a couple things. So this is right now we've got an embed of the How I Amplitude recordings. We do have some recapped. We're in the process of moving some from some standalone pages into blog posts, but I will share this here as well. We've got a couple recap articles. There's lots more than are here, but we're in the process of moving these over as blog posts. And also recapping a bunch of our old sessions. So I have a contractor now who's helping me get all this stuff done because we're sitting on a gold mine of good stories. So
definitely a gold mine. I think it's amazing that you know that people are willing, your members are willing to record and create events and videos, because it's not easy to get people to do that. And that actually ties us into the question from Franca, which was, what's your experience of encouraging storytelling through posts and articles rather than events? And do you do both?
Yeah, so we haven't really done anything besides like starting with the How I Amplitude. So typically for us, like they've started as the webinars and then getting into articles. So typically where like more official stories have gone like just in the article realm is more on our advocacy team. And so those are more official like case study stories. So they're more of like the polished stories where they have to work really closely with their teams to ensure they get sign off and the rights to post all these things. And so they will usually focus on those. And so those can be a challenge at times, especially like, you know, a lot of our customers are enterprise customers. And the more that you get into enterprise customers, the more legalities and things that we have to be mindful of. So sometimes it can be a challenge working through those types of things. And we do get some of that. You know, there have been members that we've approached and they're just like, I don't have the rights to talk about this at all. But yeah, most of our experience has been through the webinar. But I know like our advocacy team, in some ways to speed up the story process, like they'll get on a call with a company that we use to help us with the interviews. And so they'll do an interview with them that's not like public to anybody, and then they'll generate the stories through that. So that's one way that you could probably speed up the process and do it that way.
Awesome. Yeah. And the lovely thing about hosting it for the community as a webinar is that that's a community builder in itself, and people are gathering live at the same time and asking questions and connecting. So lovely. And we have another question. Do you use any type of incentives to encourage members to post?
Yeah, so not a whole lot. This is something that we've been talking about though, because we feel that our members have been doing a lot for us. And I think that there's more that we could be doing for them. I mean, obviously, you know, giving them a stage and allowing them to share their expertise. But, you know, that's not always going to be the incentive that everybody wants. And, you know, that still very much is like a benefit to us. And so, you know, we've done some surprise and delight gifting stuff. So, you know, it's not told up front that like, you know, you're going to get swag or anything from this, but we have these like cute nerdy shirts. So we have stuff like A/B test or eat, sleep, A/B test, repeat, like some nerdy like phrases around like data and analytics. So, you know, we've after the fact been like, thanks so much for attending our session. It was great. You know, pick a shirt out of our swag options and we'll send you that. So we have done some surprise and delight stuff with that. But we do want to do more in terms of like gifting and kind of thinking about like, what are those bigger incentives for the community.
Lovely. Well, everybody loves a bit of swag. And again, it is a community builder, isn't it? If you see people out and about with the branded items on, it's awareness, community building all rolled into one. Perfect. Amanda has asked if you have any tips on simple video editing tools. And I suppose the question is as well, are you editing things yourself? Are you sending them out of house?
Yeah, so honestly, this has been like pretty low lift because again, it kind of comes back to that like unpolished sort of stuff that we've talked about. So we run our sessions through Zoom. And so it would be very much like the screen share with the little speaker in the corner. So really our videos are just that. We've done, just some basic like slicing of the start and the end to ensure timing and stuff like that. But honestly, we haven't done a whole lot in terms of like refinement there. And I know like, other types of things like this, like an official brand video, we have a brand team who does those things. But on the community side, we've taken like a pretty like unpolished approach to our stories.
Nice. I like that. And I think that I think these days in general, but especially in community, you can get away with that sort of rough and ready, chuck it out there. And it almost makes it feel more authentic, especially now with everything feeling too AI and too polished. I think it's, just gets it out nice and quick, doesn't it? If you do it like that. Great. Well, we had another question around if you were building a community from scratch tomorrow, what would you do in the first 90 days to seed a storytelling culture?
Ooh, that's a great question. I mean, I definitely think in the early days, like you have to do a lot of the questions yourself and like really like moving the community forward. And so I think I would probably just be mindful of like the ways that I'm asking questions and really trying to ask them about their use cases. So I'd probably, probably through talking to the community, I would try to understand probably what some of their challenges are or where they're struggling, and then use that to like frame questions for the community and ask like how people are approaching these challenges. And then probably similar to what we've done in terms of like direct outreach, like if there's somebody who has a lot to share within those posts, or they're always commenting, maybe reaching out to them directly and asking like, hey, would you want to do an AMA or like how I Amplitude or whatever the focus is, and then start there, and then trying to just build off of those things is probably, where I would start.
Yeah, lovely. It's like you shared at some point during your presentation around just looking out for those kind of early adopters and users, those early super users. And it can be as simple, can't it, as just getting somebody on a Zoom call and recording a chat. And it can be 5 minutes, totally low pressure, totally small steps at the beginning, can't it?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, let's have a look. I think, we've got another pop up. Hang on. Here we go. Naomi is asking, what is the interview service platform?
I don't know offhand. If you want to message me on LinkedIn, I can definitely get it for you. I know because our advocacy team referenced it a couple times. I can probably even search like internally, but I don't know off the top of my head. But if you want to send me a message on LinkedIn, I'll just share my profile here. I can find out for you.
Perfect. So Dan is asking, are there other additional tools to help manage an ambassador program, and tips and tricks?
Yeah, so funny enough, this isn't an official ambassador program, but it's something we're actually actively in discussions about. So we have an advocacy team, and we're looking to create a community ambassador program. So we're thinking through right now how those things work together instead of taking away from one another. And so we're likely going to be using our advocacy platform for that. And we're in the midst of rolling that out. So Zealot is the platform that we're going to be building that out on. And there are like different missions and things in there that we can set up for folks. So if we want, people to post a story or a view or do something, we can actually set those up within the platform, and they can assign missions to certain customers. So depending on like if they're an ambassador or an advocate, we can set different missions for different folks. You can, do badges, points, like all of the gamification stuff. And so the other thing we're trying to figure out now is like how to ensure that that's not like a separate experience from our community experience, because obviously there's gamifications and points and things there. So we're just thinking through like the bigger strategy there. But yeah, those are some things that we're looking at. I know a lot of people use Slap 5 as well for advocacy. So yeah.
Super interesting. When that one's all up and running, you can come back and tell us.
Yeah, I'll do a new session on that one.
That'll be a whole nother session. So Ryan has said that you mentioned repurposing videos. So are you using editing software? Well, I suppose you mentioned that your marketing team take care of bits that go out.
So we have not yet done the video clips for these. We have with a different session we run. So we do an office hours session. We haven't been doing these internally. We've actually been using a contractor who's a YouTuber. So he and his team will do the video. So it's kind of the same purpose. Like we just have like an hour long kind of office hours where it's like Q&A and tips and tricks. And so same kind of idea here. Like we would have we'd identify questions that would be really good that we'd want to have on our like YouTube tips and tricks. So then we put those in a spreadsheet, and then our contractor will basically edit those things to take out like the ums and ahs and consolidate the video and make that more polished. So I'm not sure what they're using, but we do use a contractor for that.
Perfect. And Dan has given a shout out to Opus Clip for video editing. And I use good old Canva for video editing. It's pretty all right. There's lots of great tools these days. So Kate has asked, are the community stories focused a bit more on the end user rather than the company using them, if that makes sense? I suppose so. Are they on the member, the individual using the tool rather than what's the company getting out of the tool? Or do you highlight both?
It's a bit of both. So it is very focused on roles. So like for example, there's been one of our customers in particular, there's been 3 different people in their organization that have done How I Amplitude sessions. And it is ultimately about like the things that were outcomes for the organization, but it was specific to their role. So we had someone who was like a product analyst focused on retention. And so she shared about like, the different things that she did within Amplitude to be able to get these findings that were specific to her role. So really it is about like celebrating the users and the work that they did. But ultimately we do mention the company and where they're from, and that's always part of it. I think we probably could anonymize it if needed in some situations, because in some cases it's very much like, hey, I work with experimentation. I built this framework for my company, regardless of what company it is. This is what I did and how it's being used at my organization. So we could probably, in a lot of cases, like take the company out of it. But yeah, it's very much like the member and how it pertains to their role and like what they did and got out of it.
And I guess because it's a community program that, your goal is to be helping the members to exceed at their job by using your tools. So that's why you've shaped it in that way. It's not as much of a marketing program. It's more of a member program, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So Ryan has asked, let's do this one first then as it popped up. How do we encourage storytelling without pressuring people to overshare?
I can't say that I've really experienced that. I don't think there's been a hesitation of like oversharing. I think it's been more like the hesitation around like privacy and like what they are or aren't allowed to share. So I think it's been that. And I think it's like also been just that encouragement of like, I don't know enough, like who am I to be on here doing this webinar to saying like, oh, I did this, this, and this. And it's like, it's not necessarily about that and you being this person who's achieved all these things. It's really like the story behind it and how people can learn from you. So yeah, it's more that.
Do you ever struggle to find people to take part, or do you sort of just, what's the frequency that you're putting them out?
Yeah, so we're doing them monthly. At one point, we were doing them bi-weekly, and then we scaled that back because it's hard. Like, there's only so many members, so we were like, just to ensure that we can keep up on things. I would say, yeah, sometimes I find like, I might have them planned months in advance. Other times it's like, I'm kind of planning the next one as the last one finishes. So that's the thing that I'm trying to figure out now is how to make it a more proactive thing that people will raise their hand, and we always kind of have this like pipeline of people. I'd say like we've had good success with direct outreach, but then we get ourselves into the situation where it's like, okay, now I need to like go and do more outreach. So I'd say that's where I need to figure out how to scale it a bit more, and then maybe it's through some of these like incentives and things like that. But we've had almost 50 people on, 50 sessions. We've had a few people who've done a few sessions, so probably like 35, 40 people who've gone through this. So pretty good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think anything in community building, when we're asking members to do things, or direct outreach is always so important. And so often the way we have to do things, even, even best intentions, we don't have people queuing around the block. No, wish we did, but we so often don't. So great, we've got 5 minutes, so let's keep going these questions because they're still coming in. So amazing. How big is your community, and are you segmenting any of the videos?
Yeah, so our total community with all of our event signups and everything, we have almost 36,000. So pretty big, but in our actual community spaces, so our Slack community is about 6,000. And then same with our web forum. And so, and interestingly enough, so typically we're actually promoting these series as well to our broader user base and not just the community. And it's actually allowed us to build the community more because people will hear about our sessions through marketing emails, then they attend the sessions, then they get the follow-up to be like, hey, we have their community. You should join to learn more about these things. So it's actually been a great way to grow the community. But yes, we do segment these to different groups. So actually I use Amplitude to create the cohorts and the segments of who I will send this to. So within Amplitude, I can create a cohort based on user profile information as well as like their behavior within the platform. So if I have a session that's like, about our experimentation platform, I might target people who are using the experiment features, or there may be a marketer or something like that. So usually I'll think through like who's the most ideal user for this. In some cases, people will write and they'll be like, hey, I would love to hear the How I Amplitudes. Like I haven't been getting the emails for it, but it's because we've been doing more behavioral based targeting. But at the same time, like we don't want to email everyone everything if it's not going to be relevant. So we try to also do a mix of like, okay, if you've signed up for our community emails in the past, you'll get the emails, and then also kind of layering on the segmented groups as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And we are down to the last few minutes, but I'm going to throw in this quick fire one from Sue, which is a general community building question. So what is the most misunderstood thing about community building?
Oh, interesting question. What do I say about this? Misunderstood thing. I'd say, well, I don't know. From my perspective, it's interesting because like if I think about it from my company's perspective, I think sometimes people just see it as a channel as opposed to a strategy. And sometimes like I know in the early days of community, like we did a lot of like protection of the community. Like we don't want this to just be a place that we promote all the things in the company that's happening, or they just assume that like, okay, we've got this like great pool of people who are really actively engaged and they'll want to do anything for us. Like we still need to be mindful of the things that people want to post in the community and how they want to leverage the community. So I'd say that's probably like the thing that's most top of mind for me, because it's something that I deal with on a regular basis and just need to be mindful of, because I think the company sees a lot of value and they see the progress that we're making. And so they're just like, how do we get involved with this? How do we capitalize on this? And it's like, okay, yes, but if you just take advantage, then like the community is not going to be the community anymore. People aren't going to want to participate. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
Great answer. It's that age-old community builder dilemma, isn't it? The community at the heart of the business. Community is a strategy. Well, I'm going to thank you first, Beth. It's brilliant. Thank you so much. Your LinkedIn is in the comments, so do go and connect with Beth, and this recording will be shared afterwards. Thank you so much to everybody who has joined us, and thanks for all your brilliant questions. You've been brilliant in the chat, asking loads of great questions. So it's been a brilliant chat. And if you're not already on all the Led by Community channels, if you're not in the community, if you're not in the Slack channel, if you're not on the email, do go and sign up for it. And thank you again to Gainsight, who have been sponsoring all of these talks. And I think that's all the thank yous. So there's a lot of thank yous, isn't it? So yeah, have a nice rest of your day, wherever in the day you may be. And the one last little one, which was, will the slides be shared? Beth, will we be able to share your slides?
Yeah, awesome. I can send you a PDF. So yeah, no problem. We
will be sharing them somewhere on the Led by Community channels on the internet. You'll find them. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Beth. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.